Good morning and welcome to the webinar on data security. I'm Carrie Wheelhouse, Member Services Assistant for the South Dakota Retailers Association. First, before we get started, some information about our association. The South Dakota Retailers Association is a 4,000 member statewide association with our primary goal is to represent retailers in the legislative and regulatory process. In addition, we provide information, offer training for food service, alcohol licensees, and provide member services. Those include credit card processing, business insurance, and data security. We also have an agreement with a labor law firm that allows our members to get answers to employment law questions from an attorney. Today's webinar will feature a presentation from Tyler Ruhd of InfoTech Solutions in Madison, South Dakota. Tyler graduated with a bachelor's in business administration from Dakota State University and his master's in strategic leadership from Black Hills State University. Tyler has been in the business development director position at InfoTech Solutions since 2015. Few things before we start the presentation. The phones of all of the attendees are muted, so we won't be hearing background noises. We'll have a question and answer period at the conclusion of the presentation. If you would like to ask a question at any time, just go to the panel on the side of your screen. You may need to click on the orange arrow to maximize the panel. Type your message in the chat box and then click send. At the conclusion of the presentation, I'll read the questions out loud and Tyler will provide the answers. We'll now turn the presentation over to Tyler Ruhd.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Carrie, for the introduction. I appreciate the opportunity to present on such a hot topic right now, not only in the United States, but in South Dakota and even in our own little small communities as well. As Carrie said, we are an MSP, a managed service provider located in Madison, and we are the endorsed provider when it comes to cybersecurity and business IT. We have clients throughout the state, including Sioux Falls, Pierre, Rapid, Watertown, and Brookings, and everywhere in between. We also service a multitude of different industries, including municipalities, financial, retail, insurance, restaurant, hotels, dentistry, optometry, and agriculture. So kind of the first thing I want to do to get started is I would like to have a couple quick polls just to kind of see who I have in the audience today and kind of get a feel of how your organization runs and how it fits. So Don, if you want to bring up some of the polls, the first question, we're only going to take about 15 seconds for these. So the first question is, how many computers do you have? You can kind of see it through there. 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 20, or 21 plus. So take a couple seconds, and yeah, just kind of curious to seeing how many computers that you guys have. All right, let's see what we got. All right, kind of looks like a little bit of everything, but everyone's from around that 6 to 10 for the most part. So we consider that, yeah, in our small business. We do have a few in that 21 plus. So yeah, awesome. So yeah, let's move to the next one. Next question is, does your organization run off a server environment? So do you guys have shared drives? Do you have a server that sits somewhere and is your communication, your Active Directory? So yeah. And feel free to say you don't know. If you don't know, that's totally cool. This one should be a pretty easy one here. All right, let's see what we have. All right, good. Looks like a majority of people are running off that server environment. That is awesome. We do like to see that. There's a ton of security portions that come out of a server rather than just your endpoint workstations. Third question, let's run to that one. And this one's a little more in depth. What is your organization's RTO, recovery time objective? Which just simply means how long can your organization be down without access to your computers or server? 2 to 4 hours, 24 to 48, a week, or 2 weeks? Again, this should be something that your organization does have inside of some of your policies, and there is solutions for that, and we will be talking about these a little bit later on. So. And if you don't know, just kind of take a guess. How long would someone be able to be without a computer? So let's see what we have for that. Answer show. All right, no one's passed a week, which is great. So everyone's kind of 50-50 on 2 to 4 hours and 48 hours. All right, we can move to the last question here. Again, these are going to be super simple questions. Let's move to the last one. All right, what does your IT service consist of? Is it you or another employee that just wears a different hat? Is it one person outside of the organization on an as-needed basis? Do you actually employ an IT person? Or do you actually have an MSP like an InfoTech Solutions? All right, let's see what we have here. Looks like across the board of employing, yourself or another employee, one person outside, or an IT person. So kind of across the board, 33% across the way. So awesome. Well, that gives me a great idea of who we have. So I'll take this back over, get rid of this here. And we'll get into the guts of our program here. The first thing we are going to start out with is the new South Dakota law. And I would like to say now every state does have some sort of legislation pertaining to cybersecurity and the reporting of it. We're just going to touch on some of the points, and by no means is this a how-to kit on how to stay within the confines of the new law. The first slide really goes through some of the terminology, and it says the unauthorized acquisition of unencrypted data, and encrypted data along with the encryption key. The way that we read it is if the encrypted data does not have the encryption key with it, it does not need to be reported. The terminology kind of goes to their personal information, must be a first name or initial, so Tyler or T and the last name Ruhd, in combination with a social security number, a driver's license number, or another ID collected by the government body. I see that as if you lose your driver's license, you still get issued a license of some sort. It might not be for driving, but it's still an identifying license. Account, a credit card, a debit card in combination with the security code, access code, password, or routing number, or PIN. HIPAA is still included with this, so the health information. And then the ID number assigned to a person in combo with a security code, an access code, a password, or biometric data. I view this as something that may be a security guard to get you into a portion of a building. If that information is released as well, that would be considered that personal information. We get to protected data. That's going to be your username or email addresses in combo with a password, the security answer question, or security question answer, or the others that permit access, and the credit card number, account number, debit card number, any required codes or passwords with that as well. Again, this goes to the next portion of it, maybe on the business side. Upon discovery of this, the organization must disclose to any resident no later than 60 days. And there's a little caveat there, unless a longer time is required due to the legitimate needs of law enforcement, which makes sense. If the impact reaches more than 250 residents, it also has to be reported to the Attorney General. The notifications kind of goes up in that first line as well. Notification may be delayed if the law enforcement agency determines that the notification would impede the investigation. But once they've concluded that and said, all right, yep, we are done, now you have 30 days to notify at that point. So you do have time to get your ducks in a row, but that timeline is from 60 to 30 now. And when notifying, they can be used in a couple different ways. It can be a written notice. It can be electronic notice as well if the business's primary method of communication has been electronic, and then substitute notice. And this is where we kind of get some of the fine points. If the cost of notifying those residents is going to be more than $250,000, or it's going to be more than 500,000 people, the business will have to do each of the following. So this is not an or statement, it is each. It's going to have to email if that resident does have an email address. It's going to be a conspicuous posting on the business website if the organization does use one and maintains one. And then finally, probably the biggest one is notification of statewide media. That is something that is going to have to happen. So, and last year too, the business also has notified the consumer reporting agencies and any other credit bureau of the timing, the distribution, and content of the notice. The Attorney General may be also able to prosecute each failure up to $10,000 per day per violation, and also may recover attorney's fees. Kind of the last caveat that we see is if you do have federal oversight, so if you do have HIPAA laws that you need to abide by, those notifications, this is not in lieu of, you still have to do those as well. So, and at the very bottom here, I do want to preface this by saying I am not a legal expert. Please consult your private attorney for that legal advice. But we do have a great opportunity coming up. The SDRA, the South Dakota Retailers Association, is sponsoring employment law seminars throughout the state here in May. May 8th is going to be in Aberdeen. May 9th is in Mitchell, and May 10th in Rapid. So in addition to covering the regular information laws, during those programs, the Attorney General's office will be able to walk you through that new law and what you need to do to comply. So for information to register for that, also contact the SDRA website at sdra.org. Again, very quick recap. May 8th in Aberdeen, May 9th in Mitchell, May 10th in Rapid. So again, a super quick overview of those laws, but to have a great idea, attend one of those SDRA events. So we're going to get into kind of the breaches and causes of the data breaches here. So kind of what is a breach? The ID Theft Center identifies that as an incident in which an individual's name plus social security number, driver's license number, medical records, financial records, which include credit and debit cards, is potentially put at risk because of exposure. That exposure can be either electronically or in paper format. So again, a lot of the same terminology that in the South Dakota law, it's reflected in a lot of that as well. We are going to take a very quick recap of what happened in 2016. If you attend one of my lunch and learns, we kind of went over these before, but if you have not, here's a quick opportunity. We're going to recap 16. So taxslayer.com, that was release of username and passwords. Wendy's, their point of sale systems got infected. It's got a lot of credit cards, names, and numbers at that point. Charles Schwab was a reuse of passwords. The Washington Redskins, this is slightly different. Their athletic trainer had his car broken into in a smash and grab, but his computer was in there, so they had all of those information records as well. HSBC, the names, the social security numbers, accounts numbers, the phone numbers are made available online for multiple months. So don't really know how many people were affected by that. They have a good idea. Verizon, that was a flaw inside of their website as well. That had a lot included with that one. And then Go to My PC. That came to password reuse. Go to My PC is something that you guys may use already as a third-party entity to gain access remotely. There is attended access and unattended access. So at that point, if you had unattended access, which means you could report in at any given time and the password doesn't change and you're automatically logged in, at that point, whoever breached Go to My PC also had access to your stuff. So there's a very quick email sent out saying you need to change your password now. Let's come to something that's a little more relevant to what we're seeing today. Last year, and a lot of these are ongoing as well too, but all the information comes from the ID Theft Center, and that URL will be shown on this next page here. So this has quite a bit to do with just the general area as well, and then our everyday lives. So the Xbox and PlayStation, 1.2 million Xbox users and 1.3 million PlayStation users were impacted there. Pretty much what happened was email addresses and passwords were given out. What we hope to see is that, I would call them students or children or people have a different password from their Xbox Live to their Wells Fargo or their financials. So we can see a reuse of passwords coming in very handy right there for the hacker. Let's move over to Arby's. Arby's had 1,000 restaurants. Essentially, that was malware on their point of sale system. The FAFSA, which is kind of scary as well, that was 100,000 people impacted by the IRS data retrieval tool. So 100,000 is bad enough, but once they have found that out, they went back and looked, and they stopped an additional 14,000 illegal refund claims. So someone was going out there tried to do tax refunds just through the FAFSA. So pretty important there. Chipotle, not a ton of information has been released on this. My guess is they're still in part of their information investigation portion, but my guess is it's going to come down to credit card transactions, names, and numbers at that point. Gmail was another big one that came through. Everyone uses a ton of Gmail these days. Phishing email was made to look like it wanted to share a Google Doc link with that user. The user ended up clicking it and it brought them to the real Google site page where it also wanted the user to allow the bad Google Docs person to take advantage of their full account and manage their account. So at that point, they could switch out passwords. They could have access to all their information. So they found it out. They shut it down within an hour, but within that hour, already 1 million people were infected. So this goes to show the depth of that very elaborate phishing scheme went. DocuSign, a lot of businesses use that. A phishing attack was used to grant and obtain emails. These emails were turned around and were also part of another phishing scheme of their own, trying to get the DocuSign users to click malicious software that was branded by DocuSign. Kmart, that's going to be a point of sale system with malware in all the physical stores. Blue Cross Blue Shield, that was 80 million users affected by that. We all know about Equifax. The worst part about that is it's super sensitive data, and it reaches back a long, long ways. Inside of that data, you're going to have names, credit cards, the last 4 of your credit card number. It's going to have your house, your value of your house, your cars, stuff like that. So it's going to be very elaborate phishing schemes coming from these individuals when they choose to act on their stuff. Lastly, we're going to talk about Forever 21. It's their point of sale. The point of sale was saying it was encrypting, but in actuality, that portion failed, and it was not encrypting any of their data in transit. So that's very much part of the ongoing. So we're looking at all those credit cards. They're still saying keep an eye on fraudulent charges on your credit card on that one. So that investigation is definitely still going on. This is one of many, 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 many thousands that happen for not only users but breaches in general. But other ones that are maybe pertinent to you is Bed Bath & Beyond got breached, Jackson Hewitt, Best Buy, Pinterest, U-Haul, Uber, HBO, all the Sonic locations, I shouldn't say all of them, but a vast majority of them had malware on their point of sale, Whole Foods and Keller Williams. So the breadth is just here. This is the stuff that's going on around us. There's many, many more that are coastal and even nationwide. So at that point, there's a ton of things going on. So let's look at our next categories here. So who else has been breached? This is from the ID Theft Center. From at the very bottom, you can see the idtheftcenter.org. This breaks it down into all of last year, and the information was concluded on 1/22 of 2018 here. But it breaks it down into 5 different categories. And obviously, we're going to take a look at the business at most, because that's what the majority of people are in the retailers. So banking and credit card, the business, education, the government, military, and the healthcare. So total together, we're looking at 178 million, almost 179 million records. The breaches are 1,500. Again, these are just the known breaches and the breaches that they can count and investigations are concluded. For every one that they know of already, there's probably 10 other breaches that they don't have any more information on, and they're still concluding their investigations. So the biggest numbers you want to look at here inside of the business, it counts for 91% of all the records breached. So we're going to break that down into the next category here. And at the top, you'll see it includes the phishing, the ransomware, the malware, and the skimming devices that were included. So skimming devices, think of that as the credit card readers. They have caps that go over top of those terminals now. So I always take a quick tug on the side and see if there is a cap. There's been cases in South Dakota that they're going to ATMs as well as individual convenience stores and other point of sale systems. So always pull on those point of sales to make sure that there's not a cap on top of that. But again, 84% of the businesses came from phishing schemes, ransomware, or malware attacks. Move to the next one. Kind of what we thought is exposing the number of credit cards and debit cards category. I thought this number was slightly lower, but I guess the previous number of the 80% probably came from your phishing. So they're trying to get usernames and emails rather than credit cards and debit cards. But there's still a portion out there. There's still 11 million records exposed because of those skimming devices. So a lot of the businesses always have an idea in their head that there's going to be insider theft going on. And don't get me wrong, I think that's a valid fear or a valid scenario that could happen, but statistically, it doesn't. So a lot of these threats are coming from outside of your organization. So still have that trust, but still keep vigilant of that. But statistically, it's not there to happen. One of the last ones we're going to go over when it comes to statistics, it's going to be employee error, negligence, or improper disposal. As you can see in the business category, we're looking at 145 million again. Out of those records are coming from the business. So what you guys are doing now is that first step in getting those education aspect out to those employees, so we can reduce that employee error. So you guys again are taking that next step to hopefully reduce these numbers next year of employee error in particular. So good job for taking the initiative and doing that now. We always talk about top records per mass. At that point, records are always meant to be broken. This one's no exception, but not too many times a company can have gold and silver in the same category. I think since recently they've released, now they're thinking it's going to be closer to 3 billion Yahoo records. So they're still continuing to see those records grow and grow. The MySpace, that's been interesting too, because majority of the time, MySpace, if you're a MySpace user, it was probably 20 years ago. At that point, it would have put me in the naive category of putting out all my information out there just because there was a box that asked me to. Things like birth dates. Let's go back to the security codes, the security answers. What was my first car? Perfect. So now all those records, the 359 million records, those are all readily available out there. And now since I've moved into a business role, hopefully, they're going to try to still take advantage of that. LinkedIn's still moving, and then obviously Adobe, there's a ton of computers, a ton of businesses that still work with the Adobe. So always something to keep vigilant of. This is just the motivations behind the attacks. Cybercrime is obviously still the biggest one. Cyber espionage, that's growing. Even in Kellerland, I would call that probably cyber espionage in the Sioux Falls mayor race. But we'll see how that all pans out. There's been some accusations out. So hacktivism is still staying stagnant at the moment, but it's still a motivator. And lastly, cyber warfare, which probably see the most publicity in the last couple of years than it's ever been, but it's always been going on. An example of cyber warfare would be, instead of sending troops over, let's just cut off the electrical grid to the major cities of New York, Boston, LA, Chicago. Let's see what that does. Next thing, let's possibly alter the drinking water, because none of those are done by hand. Those are essentially all done by machines and computers. So unfortunately, that is something that is growing, but hopefully we'll be able to keep that under wraps. So we're going to kind of move into, how are these people getting in? We're going to talk about phishing here a little bit, the vendor attacks. Probably the biggest vendor attack that we've seen has been Target, and probably the most readily known. Target really didn't do anything wrong. It was actually their HVAC company that left open access to that. And at that point, the HVAC company got breached. They walked all the way through the network and then got to the point of sale system, installed malicious software on that, and then they got back out again. Weak remote access, passwords, social engineering, just view that as tricking. And then password reuse is another big one that we see how people are getting in. We do have a few examples of phishing, some just open-ended ones, and then some that we've actually seen come across our table. This is just one I pulled from online. At the top, you can see the from is from Amazon, but the actual email message or the domain's coming from Amazon Canada. So they actually bought the domain without the A. So keep an eye out for that. Dear client is a very generic, non-personalized greeting. Truthfully, we've seen that escalate. So now it's more than likely going to have your name in there in one way or another, just because of all those records being released. And probably the biggest thing is to be able to hover over top that link. There's always a call to action one way or another. And this is the way to check on it. So hover over top the link, and that's actually going to give you exactly where it's going to go. You see it's an HTTP redirect. Obviously, we don't like seeing that going anywhere that's not known already. But for that blue that blue link there, I can make that look whatever I want just by right-clicking and changing the name. Very, very easy to do, and that's where they try to trick you there. We've seen a lot of package delivery, so UPS, FedEx just saying, hey, your package has been undeliverable. Click here for your invoice, or click here for the destination, and that link is malicious software there being installed. So keep an eye out for that. This is more of a spearfishing example. So from Rick is probably the CEO or founder of Unbounce is the company name, and Michael probably has access to the money. So at that point, you can see at the URL at the top where I've circled, there's an extra R in there. So BOUNRCE, they're trying to hide that a little more. So they went out and bought a domain for 20 bucks probably, just to try to spearfish this individual. They always come across as very authoritative and saying, I need this done now. So that's very similar in how this works. Fortunately or unfortunately, we like to be very transparent when it comes to our organization. So a lot of times I can go out to a majority of people's websites and see who the president is, who the founder is, who is the comptroller, who has access to the money, who's HR, and then who I want to try to impersonate, and then who the email I want to send it to. So again, with our transparency, we're giving a lot of information out there as well. Another spearfishing example that came across our books, this one was actually pretty well written. The username was correct. The email at domain was correct. It didn't say that. And then the bad link, that's one of the two indicators that we knew that something wasn't correct. The bad link hyperlinked to something very similar to the other one, where it's a redirect, and it didn't go to Microsoft's actual location. And at the top, it was noticeRSOS.com, just something that didn't look right. So again, they did a really good job on this one, but a lot of times Microsoft will not send out something like this. You'll have to talk to your provider at that point, and they'll be able to send that off. So this information will not come from Microsoft ever. This is a W-2, so a tax spearfish. We've seen this come across. The biggest thing, that easy part that they caught is Sandy didn't have an iPhone, and no one called her Sandra. They called her Sandy. So little stuff like this person had the opportunity to spearfish it, and they just kind of blew it. But W-2s of all their employees, so that would have been 40 plus W-2s going back to this individual in the wrong hands. This one actually came to me, oddly enough. The click here link was bad. It didn't go to the LinkedIn. The other indication was up at top as euronet.nl. That didn't seem quite right. And then finally, the very last line is LinkedIn Ireland Limited. So kind of at that point, we knew that something wasn't right. So a good indicator too is if you guys are a larger corporation or you shoot emails to a lot of people, please utilize the BCC option. We've seen in the past where a legitimate company has sent out just a general email to saying thanks for everything. They had the name, the title, their position inside of that email. They sent it out and they didn't BCC everyone. They just CC'd, so everyone was able to see everyone's email. At that point, one of the other people got breached, and they went back and looked at their deleted items, and they found this email. So at that point, they tried to act as if they were the initial sender, and they went back and tried to backtrack invoices from everyone. So essentially, they just utilized the carbon copy function inside of the email, and they were able to go back and create targets just by that. So we've seen that come through. So if you are using email to vast standards and sending a lot of them out, please use the BCC function in the event someone gets breached and tries to act as yourself. This is just a really quick way just to hover over top of it. This is the way it shows up to. Obviously, a .pdf reader should not look like that for the file looking through. So you kind of seen that pop up again. So obviously, stats can be pulled, and we have a ton of them to look through, and for the most part, none of them are great on the cybersecurity end. But the main one is in the middle. An organization only needs one employee, whether it's malicious or accidental, to click the wrong item. And next thing you know, it's a chain of events leading to an information security breach. So that's the main one I want you guys to take away from that one. Why is this happening? What are they doing with all this information? So what they're doing is they're creating essentially dump shops where they take all this information, which might be the usernames, the password, the emails, the credit cards, and they create some sort of scheme to disrupt or impersonate or hold you for ransom. The picture is something that the criminals use. It's a card reader writer. At that point, I went to this super secret website called Amazon and Googled in card writer, and I came out with this one. Price is $85, which is great, but if you look up in the top, it's a 2-pack, so I get 2 of them for $85. So now me and my friend can both do it. Ransomware, we know about that. Everyone's kind of heard of that. That's kind of the biggest thing now, is where you click the wrong thing and it shuts down your network. Hopefully it just shuts down your one computer, but a lot of times it'll walk back to the server, which again, 83% of you have servers. It'll walk all the way back there and shut down everything. So that's what they're trying to do there. Creating targets and fraud all in the same. They're just trying to disrupt your life. So the next one really talks about the dump shops. This is what it looks like. Krebs on security, he went out and was able to get to this page this far. He went to the deep dark web, people refer to it as that. And this is a site where they put all the stolen or hacked data. It's a pretty scary place, right? It looks pretty user friendly. It almost looks easier to use than the majority of the websites people use on a daily basis. But you can really narrow it down. All the top parts are just drop down filters, so you can check out the banks, you can check out the states, the city if you want to. It makes sense. So I'm just going to zoom in here on the lower part and take a look at these. So now I can get down to, again, the city, the state, Texas, Washington, North Carolina, Virginia, Arkansas, Georgia. I can get down to the bank that I want. So if I want the Wells Fargo bank, maybe it's a little bigger. No one's really going to maybe catch me, opposed to, I don't know, the National Bank from Blacksburg. You might actually run into someone you know or knows the person you're trying to impersonate. The brand, Visa or MasterCard, I guess that really doesn't matter to me. A credit card is a credit card. The level, at that point, probably really doesn't matter to me either, just because there's so many variations. But if I were to pick one, I'd probably pick the platinum one because it sounds the best. If it's a debit card or a credit card, obviously I'm going to take debit because the money is already there. And that's money ready to go. I'm not exactly sure on this whole hacking stuff, but it's great if I have a refund option. Absolutely. If they didn't take my bait, yeah, I want my money back. And then obviously your price is there too. So what they do is they go back, they buy that credit card reader for $85. They come here, they buy the platinum card for $40, and they try to impersonate you and rack up credit card charges as yourself. So looking back at the levels too, maybe I'll take a business instead of that, because your credit limit is going to be substantially higher than maybe just a standard credit card. So this is what they do with it. They take it and they try to just ruin lives. Top 5 things that we see coming in into an organization are as follows. A lack of firewall or not managed firewall, or even improper configuration of a firewall. We're going to see that in a couple seconds here. Number 2, everyone has admin rights. So if you have the right to download anything and everything you want, so does that malicious software or that malicious file. Managed backup. We talked about recovery time objective. I feel that organizations have much higher levels of risk than what they think they do. Recovery time objective is one of them. It's a very high risk at that point. Hosted email. If you do have your own email and you keep that on your server, you have to keep that server open. Some ports open if you're the host. It's like locking your front door with 4 deadbolt locks, but the window right beside it's wide open because it has to be. And that's the same philosophy as that email exchange. If you host your own, you have to keep ports open regardless. Otherwise, it does not work. Lack of application whitelisting. Only certain programs are allowed to run. So we're going to talk about that a little bit here. So think of that. App whitelisting is software that is pivotal to everyday work at your office. Hey, and you get a bonus too today. Essentially, it's updates. We see a lot of non-monitored updates between the operating system and third party. They're set to automatic, but if a power surge happens or if just something breaks that download, essentially that download will never be built upon until that is actually rendered useful again. So if you go back into a computer, I've seen it where we come into organizations and they have a broken update in January of 2014, and that computer has not had updates since. So very important to do those updates. We're going to talk about firewalls here for a little bit. Really, I had no idea what a firewall was until I started going to college. I really understood it by the time I was done at DSU and realized that everyone really should have it. And truthfully, even getting down to our personal lives. Long story short, they act as a security guard to the organization. I Googled it, and this is what I came back with. And truthfully, it left more questions than it did answers when I started. So long story short, you have your computers on the left, if you have an offsite server too, so you have your computers on the left. It's able to go through one of those designated areas on that firewall. It goes through the nasty cloud of internet into your server and back and forth. So it allows hackers throw rocks at the internet wall and drop. I'm not sure. So I made my own essentially, and this is what we came up with. So there's different parts of firewalls, and one's going to be not managed. And I will start with a router is not a firewall. A firewall can be a router though, so it cannot do all the things that a firewall can do. So if you have a router, you're essentially able to bottleneck all of your traffic through one area. So the best analogy I thought was an airport. At an airport, everyone has to go through a metal detector, no matter who you are, whether you're a pilot, whether you're a passenger, airport workers, everyone has to do it. If you have a router, you don't even have a metal detector. You just have a doorway everyone has to go through. There isn't any scanning of baggage or scanning of people, nothing. If you have a true firewall, you have the picture of what you see in front of you. Everyone has to go through it. Some people are good people or that should go through. Some people are bad people, and essentially they get turned away. Simple failure detection is where the firewall doesn't know if it's a bad guy or not because of its updates, or if it disguises itself as someone else, so a deep packet inspection. But the main thing is, if the detector goes off, there still isn't anyone there to actually stop that bad guy from going through and doing anything. It doesn't report to anyone. So let's see what a managed firewall looks like. So now you have someone actually watching it. Security guards saying you can't come in, but there's still a problem on the back end. Those people that are actually should be there, they can go wherever they want. The airport workers can walk all the way to the cockpit. The passenger workers can go all the way back to the baggage. The passengers of the actual the flight go up to the cockpit too if they want to. So there's really no rules or regulations of where people can go. We hope that no one disguises themselves as someone else and they shouldn't be there. So again, it's still an issue. So now you have an area where everyone should be. Let's say the top part is the passenger area. So they just get to go to the terminals, they get to go to the food court, and that's about it. The middle part, let's call that the airport workers. So they're able to go back and do all the baggage. They're the ones doing the calling. That's where they should be as well. And the bottom part, let's call them the pilots. They go from there where they scan in, they go to the cockpit and back again. That's what it should be. But you guys don't really care about airports, airplanes. So let's bring this back to your organization. So we're going to go back to the not managed here. With an installation of a firewall that isn't managed, you are going to catch some bad guys, but there's still some that are going to go through. And for the most part, those are for the security services that you guys are paying for. So if you pay for a firewall once, that's the only update that firewall is ever going to get. So if you installed that firewall in January 1 of 2015, it hasn't had any more updates since unless you're paying for those security updates. If you pay by yearly, because that is an option, the updates will only get administered once a year. So it is, let's say today is April 25th. If you pay that today and new malicious files come out on May 10th, let's say they found them in Europe and Dell says, yep, we're going to deploy those to all of our US firewalls, you guys will not get that update until April 25th of 2019. So going back to the home router again, there's really no effective scanning going on at all. So let's say we pay for those security services, which is great. Now you have up-to-date security guards. And then there's also the managed portion, so you can have a managed paying by yearly or you can do by monthly. And those monthly ones get, if there's a new one, it gets administered as soon as it can. So it's still good. The right people are getting to the back end, but it's still what we call a flat network behind you. Now everyone has a huge gym to play around in. So like your business network, which includes probably your HR, your payroll, your guest wireless, so the patrons that you give the guest password to be on the internet while they're there at your organization. Your business wireless, so all the devices you need, so laptops that need to be connected, they're back here too. And then your credit card machines. Essentially now, someone who has a guest wireless password can walk all the way through the network up to your QuickBooks file or sit there and spoof your credit cards. So again, it's not a segmented network. This is what I would consider probably a correctly segmented network. Everyone has their own room in which they cannot talk to each other. Without using switches, you can designate up to 4 security areas. Now you have your business network on one of them. You have your guest wireless on one of them. You have your business wireless on one of them. And last, you can have your credit card machines on the last one. However, a firewall, you're still not made 100% secure from all these breaches. There's no silver bullet that can protect you from everything. However, with our layered methodology, we have a great equation to substantially reduce that actually from happening. So again, it comes into a layered process and proper usage of the equipment. Talk about passwords for a little bit here. I don't know who said it has to be one string of letters and numbers for your password. We strongly suggest passphrases. There's nothing inside of that saying the password can't be, it's a beautiful day outside. It could be, I have 5 kids. My wife's name is whatever. My husband's name is this. My dog's name is this. My cat's name is this. That's stuff that you're going to remember, and it will always suffice for those password rules. So strongly suggest moving to a passphrase instead of a password. It doesn't have to be lowercase p, uppercase R, 5, $, lowercase c, 1. It doesn't have to be that anymore. Make it a passphrase. Do not reuse your passwords. We talked about that. A lot of those people in our first couple slides, that's how they got in trouble. That's where we hope like those Xbox and those PlayStation users did not reuse those passwords. You don't want your Facebook password to be the same as your financial information. You should not be able to go to Facebook and then go to Wells Fargo with the same password and username. We strongly suggest a password manager when it comes down to it. It stores all your information there. A lot of those can be programmed into the site. So once you go to the site, it puts it in there for you. It just retrieves it from its database. We like to see that. And finally, stop giving out information on social media. I don't know how many times I see simple posts, and we put this up on our blog. So if you want to go take a look at it, go look there. But simple post on Facebook saying, you know, cars aren't made like they used to. What was your favorite car? Or what was your first car growing up? And comment below for a free car wash or whatever it is, fill in the blank. So people will put in there. But if you go, now let's move to the financial sector, and you put your username and password in, now it asks you, what was your first car? Well, you just put that out to 1 million users on Facebook. They now have an answer to a security question for you. So don't put stuff out on social media that would potentially come back to be a security question for you. We talk about NIST. We talk about effective mitigation strategies. This is from the Australian Department of Defense, which is very similar to the NIST standards as well. NIST really has been recently focusing on the credit card, or excuse me, the passwords and the encryption. They've really moved past. They used to say you need to change your passwords incrementally, so either 2 months, 3 months. But now they're saying, well, let's not do that until you see an indication of compromise with that individual, because in the long run, change your password is something that the bad guys ask for. So why are we asking the good guys and the bad guys asking the same question? So they say, don't do it for now unless you see an indication of compromise. And then you also talk about encryption. As anything else, there's different levels of encryption as well. We use the AES encryption, which is a NIST standard, but there's different kinds, and some of those encryptions can be broke just as easy as not having encryption at all. So that's kind of what they're focused on now. But as you see in front of you, there's 4 different mitigation strategies that are considered essential. One's going to be the application whitelisting, which we kind of already talked about. Only programs that are pivotal to day-to-day operations. This might be your QuickBooks. This might be Sage. This might be Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access, just those. Everything else is bad by default. 2 and 3 kind of go together. It's patch applications between the third-party patches, which is number 2, and then number 3 is going to be your operating system patch management. You can see in there, it says avoid Windows XP. Yep, those have been gone for a couple years now. They are no longer receiving patches at all. So if you have any XPs, you need to replace them now, or should have replaced them already. In lieu of that, you need to think about any Windows 7 machines. Any Windows 7 machines are going to become an end of life on 2020. So you should have a contingency plan or a budgetary plan to replace those by that. And unfortunately, it's not like October of 2020, it's January 1 of 2020, so right away at the new year. And number 4 there, restriction of administrative privileges. Again, we talked about this. If you have the right to download anything and everything you want, that malicious software also has the right to download anything and everything it wants. Go to the next column. You'll see the overall security effectiveness. They are all essential. You're going to have some user resistance between a few of them. Probably the biggest one that we see is number 4, the restrictive administrative privileges. They sometimes individuals get mad because they can't download anything, but it is also considered a threat to the network. And we just work with that organization to feel what's the best balance that is. So you'll see some cost to that as well. The nice part is a lot of this stuff is already involved or incorporated with our services. So that's kind of nice there. And the maintenance is great because we take care of that for you. So again, these are the mitigation strategies moving forward and current today. We always like to see the indicators of compromise, the red flags. This is kind of what we see as some of the things here. But unfortunately, majority of these items are in the back end of things, which means the network person would have to be able to see it. Or if you had a friend that came in not associated with the company, or they don't have any skin in the game, so they're not going to go out here and monitor these things daily. So it's a set up and forget about it. That's stuff that we do not do. It's kind of like a fire system. You know, you install it, but it's not actually monitoring anything and having it reporting to someone. Eventually, it's going to have, or eventually something's going to go wrong, and but it's going to take someone to figure it out later, and by that point, the damage is already going to be done. But these are some things to look for: locked out of accounts continuously, which just means they're taking over access, changed file location or content, unexpected installs, failed login attempts, after hours access. Again, these are things that typically the end user are not going to know. Reboots and shutdowns, reduced network speed, turned off controls, and probably the biggest one you're going to see is a new user hidden, and it's going to have admin rights, so they're able to get in anytime they want and then also access anything they want as well. So these are our services at InfoTech. Managed firewall, we do that for you guys. There's quite the spectrum of firewalls out there in different sizes. All really depends on your network and what you have there. Managed backup with datos. The data option, we talked about recovery time objective before. With data, we are able to get to that 2 to 4 hour range. The nice part is about data, it takes an on-site copy, and let's say your server dies, because again, 83% of you have server environments. Let's say a hardware issue happens and you can't just go to Walmart and pick up that hardware issue. We can have you up and running within 2 to 4 hours of that. Let's say there's a natural disaster and you have, let's say you have your server room is inside of the closet that has the water and there's water spraying on your server. We can flip that up into the cloud as well. So everyone can still work. There's no damage to the building. But at that point, your server is useless. We can have you up within a day running on that too. Sometimes, a lot of times, it's going to be quicker than that, but we just do that to cover and give us some leniency time. TechWatch Essentials is going to be your operating system and patch management. Again, monitoring and managing all that, making sure those are successful. It's going to be the antivirus included in there. It's also going to be your asset management. So you'll have a full list of all your computers that have been on the network, where they're at in their operating systems, when they're purchased. We do have email solutions. We are an Office 365 provider, everything from Simple Exchange to Microsoft Office included with those as well. And then obviously we have our professional IT help, so you're able to call in. And again, all the stuff is considered into your contract. Majority of the stuff is going to be covered. So anything that's from 8 to 5, any of those questions are going to be covered in one monthly bill. Very rarely we have an extra charge outside of that. So follow us on Facebook. We have a blog as well, Twitter and LinkedIn. So run out there, take a look, like us, follow us. We do throw some of the newest and most prevalent threats to you, whether it's in your personal life or in the work environment as well. Something just back as typing .com opposed to .cm. ESPN had that breach as well, so someone bought that domain. So if you mistype that, it brings to you malicious software. On the business end, on the personal end, something as simple as MyFitnessPal just got breached this last year. Panera Bread just got breached. It gives you the insight and possibly what to do with that. So again, Follow us on Facebook, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and join in our LinkedIn. In closing, there's a lot of things going on in this world. Again, there's no silver bullet in which to cover your whole organization and everyone inside of it. The main thing is to layer your security systems and then M&M, which is monitor and manage it. Do not set it and forget it. At that point, by the time you remember to go back and look, something's already happened, and now we're in recovery strategy mode rather than preventive or protection mode. We do have some lunch and learns coming up, which we go over very similar information, but it'll be in person, so it's a better chance to interact more face-to-face. Plus, you get a free meal out of it. Those are going to be in June 7th. We're going to be in Pierre. August 23rd, we're going to be in Mitchell. October 18th, we're going to be in Brookings. So again, we're going to have those out there as well. So check on the SDRA site. You can log in through there and RSVP, or else you can contact me. We do provide free assessments to our businesses through the SDRA too. So I invite you to shoot me an email. My email's on the screen there. We'll come down, we'll take a look, and really give you a good look at your environment. Once we're completed, we'll give you a report back that talks about your overall security, as well as our services to mitigate some of those threats. I think there's probably been some questions through here. I'll invite Carrie to come back and read any of those off that have come through. Any questions that I do not get through while on this webinar, I will follow up with you directly. So Carrie, if you want to fire away, and we'll see what we got for questions.
Well, thank you, Tyler. And now we'll open it up for questions. To ask a question, go to the panel on the side of your screen. You may need to click the orange arrow to maximize the panel. Type in your message in the chat box and then click on send. I'll read the questions out loud and Tyler will provide the answers.
Yeah.
Couple questions. Is there any free firewall or cybersecurity software that is effective?
I would say if you're in a personal environment, so if it's just your home computer, I would say there are options out there. But if you're in a business network, I would say no, because a lot of times what those are is you're paying for, like Dell, for example, to update their security services. So if a new malicious website is found out there, Dell goes in and updates that and then gets it pushed to your firewall. And then we'll obviously make sure that those we'll monitor and make sure that those updates are successful at that point as well.
Is there any binding outside parties to good practices when they send data on their employees, such as background checks for clearance?
I guess not entirely sure of the context of the question, but I guess just myself listening to this outright saying, I think there are some good binding policies, third-party policies that are something that businesses have dealt with for many years. Probably talking to your attorney and just making sure that there's something written up in the event there is a third-party breach that's not your fault, essentially, that was a full assumption of liability to that other third party. And when you're talking about other third parties as well, making sure that they have unattended access, essentially, that they can't jump in anytime they want and make their updates. For example, for ours, when a third-party software person needs to update their stuff for a client of ours that we schedule all the time from, in very simplistic terms, we open the door for them. We unlock the door, open the door for them, make sure they get their thing done. We shut the door and lock it behind us. There's no, whoops, I forgot to lock that door behind me. It's my fault that your organization got breached because of a third party's accident, essentially.
If we have employees working from home, what is the recommendation for firewalls at home?
Yeah, so you don't need a firewall at home. Firewalls, if you have multiple locations for firewalls, you will need a firewall at each location, especially if you need to jump back to a server. But if you're having employees work back from home, there's multiple different ways to do it in a secure fashion. We like to see a VPN tunnel. So let's put it in this way. If you are, let's say we're not working from home, but you guys are a business that have conferences in Chicago or Denver or New York or fill in the blank, you don't want to be sitting on the hotel's wireless. That's the last thing you want to do, because there's essentially a thing called a pineapple where it emits a wireless infrastructure, and if you connect to that one accidentally, which I would personally call it, whatever hotel you're staying at, guest or free guest wireless, they can watch everything you do. So essentially working with your firewall and creating a VPN tunnel, which is a virtualized private network, back to your organization. But there's other ways to do that too, because every once in a while you get so many VPN licenses with your firewall. Sometimes it gets expensive when you have multiple people coming back for that. So there's other options. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about them. Just shoot me an email.
Going along with that, I've heard that Wi-Fi service can be a problem. What should I watch for if I'm using Wi-Fi at a motel or restaurant?
Yeah, what I would probably do, and it's super tough. So in my opinion, I use a lot of my private data, my 4G. A lot of times I won't get on. If you are working on a computer and you need to access any business information, I would be using the VPN tunnel back to your organization. If it's going to be at a restaurant or hotel, I would not check any of my financials because it all depends on that organization. Whatever that restaurant does for security, you're relying on them. So I would definitely get something that has a password on it. Some organizations do. Some just have it posted inside of the menu. Some hotels you have to get it at the front desk. But making sure that at least have minimally a password on it. But I'd be very cautious on what I actually check while I'm on quote unquote free wireless.
To be in compliance with the new DoD NIST standards, do you have any suggestions for small businesses in South Dakota?
Yeah, we kind of hit on those a little bit through there, going back to that slide with all the tables. It's going to be your application whitelisting. It's going to be your patch management. And again, patch management does not mean you set your computer to automatic and hopefully it updates, and you're relying on every single person inside of your organization to check that, every month or daily. That shouldn't happen. Application whitelisting, making sure you're encrypting your data, and probably the NIST standard, which again the AES. That's what we use. So there's multiple different things, but it's a layered system. The nice part is if you get like an MSP like this, that's a lot of the stuff that we follow on standard practice. So that's stuff that we can definitely help out with.
Okay, and it looks like we have one more. Who provides the best and hopefully reasonable business identity theft protection insurance?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. I don't know. I don't have a recommendation for you on that one. I would probably suggest starting out with your business insurance agent, and they'll probably have an idea for you. They'll probably have a solution A, but talk around. Other organizations probably have it. There's going to be, I obviously business ID theft protection. There's going to be cybersecurity insurance too, and all of them play a part.
All right. Thanks again to Tyler from InfoTech Solutions for today's presentation. This webinar was recorded, and a link to the recording will be emailed to you later today. Before we conclude, I'd like to let you know about our educational opportunities in May. Again, like Tyler mentioned, we are sponsoring labor law conferences in Aberdeen, Mitchell, and Rapid City. At those workshops, employment law attorney Chris Hoyme of the Jackson Lewis Law Firm will focus on key issues facing employers today. In addition, we'll have the Attorney General's office there to explain South Dakota's new data breach reporting law, which affects all businesses of all sizes in South Dakota. And Tyler touched a little bit on that, but they will go into further detail at those labor law conferences. We're also partnering with the South Dakota Department of Revenue to present a webinar that will explain new state laws regarding alcohol sales and services. And we'll be also teaming up with the Department of Labor to present a webinar on recruitment and management strategies for youth in the workplace. Check out our website for details at www.sdra.org. We'll also include links with the webinar recording. Again, we'd like to thank Tyler for doing this presentation today and for all of you in participating in today's program. Have a great day.